Hey everybody, Ash here. Welcome back to Gents. Today I am joined with or by Richard Irfan. He's the owner, perfumer of the brand Precious Liquid, and we're going to be kicking off a series where he and I join up and talk about fragrances. So he's going to be able to give you the point of view from an actual professional perfumer and kind of help break down like what's in a fragrance, the quality of a fragrance, what causes a fragrance to smell the way it smells, everything from like that perspective, which is something that is not done very often. So I'm really appreciative that you're even doing it because I know it's you got to take a lot of time out to do it, and it's not something that a lot of perfumers would even actually do. So thanks for that. But
Thank you very much, Ashton.
oh
Yeah,
yeah, like we've
thank
we've
you.
known each other for a while. I think going on 3 years.
Yeah. I think yeah, just like around that COVID mark.
Yeah, yeah.
We all have
Actually,
more time.
yeah, and you're the perfumer of Edgewater back there. It's like you can barely see it right there. But
I have mine over there too.
oh yeah,
Nice.
yeah, perfumer of that too. So yeah, yeah. So you can do a video in the future with me where you break down kind of how that one came to be. But today we're going to be tackling a couple of huge ones, a couple of huge fragrances, which is going to be these Aventus and Club de Nuit Intense Man. But I wanted to bring up really quickly one of yours, which is Salt and Pepper. This one I've been wearing because this is like super ultra versatile. And yeah, you got one.
Mhm.
Do you want to? You can do a better breakdown of that than me. You made it.
Yeah. Okay. I will do. Yeah, so I'm going to actually spray it because I always like to be, re surprised, by a scent. Yeah, so that fragrance, I love the elegance of it. I find it really refined with and that because of like those three seeds, the carrot seed, that gives like a really refined appeal to it, and
Yeah,
it's quite peppery, like the name says, salt and pepper. And the idea was like to get, this wave of salty freshness, so I'm using some very special seaweed extracts. So it's a combination of a few different seaweed extracts that really give this depth, and that kind of salty aspect, to the fragrance. With like the cologne, that is a molecule that is in an aqua di Gio, for example. So that's kind of like a synthetic that's really nice to keep a long-lasting freshness in a fragrance.
yeah. It has to me like kind of a blue fragrance versatility where you could use it like spring, summer, fall to the office casually, just kind of doing whatever you want because it has that type of mass appeal where like pretty much everybody's going to like it. So you can wear it whenever you want and you don't really have to think about it very much. So it's that type of fragrance where if you're going out the door and you don't really know what to wear, you could just grab it and spray it on and go and it's going to work pretty much wherever you go. So that's one of the
Yeah.
reasons that I've been kind of wearing that one. It really kind of grabbed my attention the first time I sprayed it on. It's really good stuff.
Yeah. Well, we also always try to get like a lot of long lastingness. So for a fragrance that's watery, fresh, we put like there is a little bit of wood, a touch of wood, but I don't really mention it. But I put a little bit. But that clean wood, that I like to work with, and the patchouli and amber, those kind of ambery notes that go a long way to keep the fragrance going. A little bit of a piney note, also like a fir note, that gives plays well with the mossy aspect of the fragrance. There's a kind of a fresh moss. I'm always
Mhm.
like very intrigued by the smell of fresh moss. Like when you go to the forest and you have
Yeah.
this fresh moss, like by a little river, and you get this kind of watery appeal that's very interesting too, So this combine a bit like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that one, I know you said is one of the best sellers. It's like kind of a standout. And I think it is just because it's really, really easy to like wrap your head around, but then it has, like you said, a nice elegance, good quality. So it's one of those things that you can buy it and get something high quality that you can actually wear, as opposed to
Yeah.
maybe something that's high quality, but then is something you wear only once a year or something. So
Yeah, you're right. That's really for me is it's like clothes, You have those clothes that you end up wearing all the time, and it's the same thing with fragrances. You feel that it fits you, and you don't let the clothes wear you. You wear the clothes, I always think that's very important, that people sometimes they want to appear a certain way, but it doesn't fit who they are, So
yeah,
I think fragrance has to blend with your personality and has to be an enhancer of who you are, That's
yeah,
what we really try to do with Precious Liquid. We are not a brand that is trying to be like kind of tacky, trying to kind of, be seductive and all of that stuff. We're not playing that game, We're just about you are who you are and you're transparent about who you are, and that's really what we're trying to achieve with a Precious Liquid. The spirit behind it, we try to keep it like a clean spirit and a transparent spirit, that's what we try to do. So
and
it
if you can
reflects.
wear it with confidence, it makes it all the much better. Well, like you were saying, so you're wearing the fragrance, it's not wearing you. So
Yeah.
yeah, it makes sense. And there are a lot of other ones too that I would talk about. We will talk about them as time goes on. Maybe we'll like do like an intro on each one, like when we do the videos. You can break them down.
What is very nice, we came up with that set, and you can customize it. And so, for example, that's like one of the. It's a box, so you have 3 spots for 10 mLs, and this one has aqua oud, salt and pepper, and blue agave. They are like our 3 bestsellers for men's, like really, really good fragrance. And that's really the best to see which one you really fall in love with, because
Right.
uh, those 75, they are like a commitment, So we
Yeah,
wanted
yeah.
people to be able to really make sure they commit on the fragrance that's really the one that they're going to end up like making
Yeah.
theirs.
Yeah, sampling is I talk about it all the time, but especially if you're making like a bigger purchase, sampling is always the safest thing, smartest thing. If you if you want to, play it safe is the best way to go.
So
So fragrances on the chopping block today are, like I said, Aventus and Club de Nuit Intense Man, because Aventus is like the number one biggest niche fragrance, I guess. As far as men's fragrances goes, it's the one that everybody says, the king of fragrances. And then Club de Nuit Intense Man is the most popular clone, the most popular alternative. And so price wise, this one is retail for a 100 mil, $495. And you can find it at discounters, maybe around 275 for that size. And Club de Nuit Intense Man from discounters, you're looking at you like $25 to 30. So pretty big price difference. Aventus about 10 times more expensive from discounters, and at retail, it's closer to probably what 16, 17 times more expensive. So yeah. So you've got Club de Nuit Intense Man, and then I sent you some Aventus from mine. That way we'd have the exact same bottle and everything because of how Aventus is with batch variations and stuff. I guess let's talk Aventus first, if that's okay with you. Just kind of like what makes Aventus Aventus and the quality of ingredients and things like that. Because I can tell you from like a layperson standpoint, with Aventus, people always say the opening with pineapple, they'll be like, oh, great pineapple opening. And then a smoky birch dry down. And that's like what everybody fixates on is the pineapple in the opening and the birch in the dry down. Now, I've always heard that pineapple is there's not actually pineapple, that it's an accord that you make, usually with like bergamot as one of the main ingredients to get something that smells like pineapple, because you can't actually take pineapple and get like the essence of the pineapple basically and put that into a fragrance. Is that true? Because that's what
yeah, I mean,
is always said.
first of all, thank you for sending me both of them. So
Oh yeah.
we really compared the exact same fragrances, because there are so many different lots, and even the
Yeah.
maceration of the fragrance plays such an important role.
Mm-hmm.
So we're really talking about the same batch, same everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say Yeah, so pineapple, it's interesting because Man, actually, the fragrance I'm consulting, fragrance house I'm consulting is a French company that is family-owned business, the biggest of the biggest size in the world, you know, and they actually figured out a way to be able to extract from the real pineapple.
No.
So we have what we call a jungle essence, you know, and that extraction is a very special. So we use like frozen pineapple that have been frozen at the perfect, you know, ripeness, you know, because you want the juiciness of the pineapple. And we were able to extract with a CO2 process. So it's like a way that you can really get the real thing, you know. But until then, you're right, like there are some molecules that are smelling like pineapple and that we combine together to get that pineapple effect, and it works pretty good, but it never has that natural appeal that you have from that jungle essence that Man created. So but here they don't have that ingredient, so it's definitely a synthetic combination of ingredient, you know, that are quite realistic, you know. So they give you this juicy pineapple effect. So, but you know, you had it like also in Cool Water is a good fragrance that had allylamyl glycolate. That's another molecule that has that pineapple effect. And the Dracar Noir in the past too, they had the allylamyl glycolate too. But this one has a slightly different molecule, but that's yeah, for me, I smell also the pepper. The pink pepper is very important in the opening. And I'm smelling something quite anisig, like especially when I was comparing it to Club de Nuit. I had something anisig. And also the bergamot is extremely important. Like they have like 30% bergamot, you know. So that's like a subtle citrus note. It's one of the most expensive citrus note on the palette, you know, because citrus, orange is really cheap, lemon is not so upscale. So really, if you want to go up there, you have to go with mandarin, that's more expensive. But then bergamot is like the creme de la creme, is like the top. You know, if you go to
It's the good
Italy,
stuff.
is that like they very particular, and especially the bergamot coming from Sicily, you know, has to be harvested the right way. It's like it's very tricky to find the great crops, you know, and be able also to maintain the quality over time. You know, with bergamot, you know, you know, it's like Mother Nature, you know, like if 1 year it rains too much, everything is like different, it smells different, it's diluted, it's, you know, watered down. Here, I must say that in Creed, they try to keep this very high quality of the bergamot, you know, so I believe that's one of the reason why people would pay that much money is that, you know, and the pink pepper quality too is very important to have this beautiful quality. Because I give you an example, pepper, I can have a pepper, a normal black pepper that's going to smell kind of like a little bit peppery, you know, but the pink pepper is very particular, and it's 10 times the price of the normal pepper, you know. And so again, like with the bergamot, you have like bergamot bases that are made out of synthetic. They would smell quite the same, but they are very different. They don't have this nice aromatic note, you know, that and on the skin it doesn't last that much, and it doesn't have the refinement, you know, that you know, Mother Nature, like when you have bergamot, you have like hundreds of ingredients that are in that bergamot. Some are in trace amount. So when you do those artificial bases, you just like keeping like just 50 of the most important products. Some of them you don't have access, you know, because they are too expensive, or we don't use them very often. So those bases are always incomplete, you know. They are not like something that has the depth and the richness, you know, of the fragrance, you know.
Like you're missing out on some of the trace elements that makes it what it is.
Yeah, that makes it natural, because it's more complex. You lacking complexity, you know, and depth, you know, very often.
That's really I guess the opening part of Aventus that grabs people's attention is that fruitiness. Because that's like you were saying, it just kind of grabs your attention. Like the quality is really nice. The citrus comes through pretty clearly, and then has these other notes kind of shoring it up. And then as it dries down, it's the smokiness that comes out. And like you were saying before, there are different batches. So some will be really, really heavy on the smokiness and not very fruity, and others will be vice versa. This one I think is a little more balanced because it doesn't get like super smoky, but you get a little bit of that. So how does that come across to you, I guess, as far as like how they accomplish what everybody would call, birch smoky dry down?
Yeah, so the birch note is something where it's also an ingredient that had some issues with some IFRA rules, so there are some qualities. I suspect that maybe they had a quality in the very beginning that was not okay anymore, so they had to find a replacement. And birch is a very powerful ingredient, so you put in very small amount. But if there are small changes, some of them, it will affect the fragrance. One thing I wanted to add also about the citrus note is that 30% of citrus in an opening of a fragrance, especially for the US, it's kind of quite daring because in the US, people don't like too much citrus notes. Like in general, for them, it's a little bit aggressive, a little bit, they don't like that much a citrus note. But bergamot being one of these citrus, that, as we say, is very refined and all that, they were able to put like about 30% in the fragrance, which is like kind of a record. So it's kind of like bringing all that freshness in a slightly classic way, because bergamot is more like a little bit more of a classic perfumery ingredient for me. But I would just wanted to mention that bergamot in that citrus opening is quite unique for the men's market, the market in general.
It probably helps it stand out more, especially when it came out. Just like when Aventus now, like there are so many fragrances that smell Aventusy that a lot of people will think that it's not super unique anymore. But when it came out, there really wasn't anything that smelled like it, or not exactly like it. So it was a little more unique, I feel like, when it first dropped compared to now.
So the thing for me also, like bergamot, go back to bergamot again, is like like in the cologne, the classic, very classic cologne, that has a lot of bergamot too, so it's like it's kind of when you think about it, it has that classic opening, to the fragrance. I mean, clearly Ashton, like the level of ambrox, that molecule that is loved.
Oh, right.
Went up to 10%. So it's an expensive molecule.
Mm-hmm.
That smells ambery, a little bit like ambergris. It's really something like that was first used really in bigger quantity in cool water from Davidoff.
Ambroxan.
Yeah, Ambroxan. Yeah. That was the first time that it was kind of overdosed. Before they were putting a little bit of it actually in fabric softener, even though it was very expensive, because the molecule has something that was very, it's clean. It's a clean woody note. It's like something on its own, but it blends very well in the back of the fragrance. And there's something magic about Ambroxan, is that actually when you put it in a hot weather environment, it's a molecule that when you sweat, it activates the scent of the molecule. So basically, so it's quite incredible, because you go to, let's say you go to the gym, so you will be on your bike, and the more you sweat, the more you activate the fragrance, which is amazing. This is really what you want, you want to cover maybe some more or something. So it's I must say that must be also one of the reason of the success of the fragrance, is that having like this like high amount of Ambroxan, and the patchouli also helps to like really keep the depth of the fragrance. The two work together, So it's and there's also like a little leathery note in the back, something that's a kind of a vetiver, a little bit leathery note in the back that's quite predominant. So it helps to really anchor. So it's like, it's very nice because you have the freshness, but you have the depth. For me, it's a very simple fragrance. You know, it's very, very direct, very straight to the point. It's not a Hollywood movie where you have a little bit for everybody. No, no, no. It's like very streamlined, you know, and that's what I really like about the fragrance. It happens quite rarely, but when a fragrance becomes a success and it's written like very in a minimalistic way, it becomes a huge success, you know. So I think that's what happened there, you know. It was not meant to be, because it's a niche fragrance house. They didn't think about making a huge success, you know. They just created that fragrance, you know, an honest fragrance, and it became such a trend leader, you know. So many fragrances have borrowed from that, you know. So
yeah, across everything. Designer fragrances, niche fragrances, indie fragrances, everything.
yeah, like Sauvage is a great example, because you know Sauvage is totally something that has been borrowed from this fragrance, even though it's different, it's very different. But you know, Aventus was a trendsetter, and then came Sauvage, you know, like and now Sauvage I think is number one, or you know, in the US. So it's huge fragrance, but Aventus came first.
So that's the overall kind of breakdown of Aventus. Overall, in your opinion, the quality of Aventus, is it like legit quality? And do you think the price point is like commiserate with the quality, or?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, it's like a masterpiece, you know. So it's like always hard. I always say, like, it's when I go to the restaurant, I always say to my wife, you know, even if the check comes like really, really high, if I had a great meal, I never complain. But if the check is if the meal was really awful, whatever bill they are going to come, I'm going to complain about it. I'm not going to be happy. So I do believe in this case they really did an amazing creation, so they can price it. It's like when you go to a modern art place, you know, like
All right, yeah.
they basically it doesn't have a price, you know. You can put the price tag that you want, you know, as long as you have something that people are willing to pay for, because it's beautiful, you know. So I think that's something that we have to keep in mind, you know. They did an amazing creative job, and I know the house that, so they really they did not compromise with the quality of the bergamot, and that's 30% of the formula. It's really an expensive ingredient, and the other ingredients are expensive. It's an expensive formula. It's really expensive. There's no way you can make an Aventus with going really cheap, you know. I mean, or you're going to lose on a lot of refinement of what makes Aventus, you know. So I must say it's we all know the performance wise it's pretty good, you know. I think the new version, unfortunately, they lost some of the performance, you know, and the long lastingness, because of the lyrol, you know, they had to remove certain ingredients, and that I find very sad, you know, because I believe those ingredients, they were not that toxic, or whatever you want to say, you know. Sometimes, you know what they do, they feed those ingredients, or they put it on animals for like at high amount, and then they see what it does. But a lot of things in high amount is going to be bad for you, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't even agree with how they test those ingredients, and the reasons why they get rid of those ingredients. I don't agree, you know. So, but that's what it is, you know. You have to comply. So unfortunately, I believe that lyrol, you know, that was really in 2% of lyrol is irreplaceable, and unfortunately, for the long lasting, really, that's really affecting the fragrance and the performance of the fragrance.
Yeah, so the older ones, yeah, they were known for being stronger and having more push. Yeah.
the lyro, you know, for the back of the fragrance that vibrates with the, and also the birch that we talked about that I believe they had to change the quality because of safety rules again. So that unfortunately, I will not say has killed the fragrance, but has brought the fragrance to a place where it's not as performance. And performance is very important. I mean, for me,
Yeah.
if I wear a fragrance, it's not that I want to show off or anything, but I want to make sure I get a good performance, especially if you pay those prices. So to answer your question, Ashton, I'm not like, I'm a little bit more on the fence right now, saying like a straight yes, you know. Yeah, you know, if you are not someone who is like so much performance driven, you know, and you think like I just want something very beautiful and I'm more into a little bit more subtle, if it's a little bit more subtle, I'm fine with it, then I would say Aventus is still a very good buy, you know. It's beautiful, you get the richness, the depth, you get all of this. So I would say yes on that side, but then if you are someone who is looking for performance, unfortunately, that is lacking with the new batches. We've been seeing that it's an issue.
And then it's kind of a double-edged blade there because it's also more expensive now than it used to be, and the bottle size is smaller than it used to be. Yeah, that does make it takes some of the wind out of the sails for sure. So that's Aventus. Now let's talk Club de Nuit Intense Man, which is super cheap. Like I said, this is about $25 from a lot of places. It goes up to about 30. It is the most popular Aventus clone, alternative, whatever you want to call it, inspired by fragrance by Armoff. So this one, I'll give you like the layperson rundown. It is known for having better performance than Aventus, for being a little rough in the opening, for having kind of like a more lemony opening, and for having more of a smokiness as it dries down compared to like modern day Aventus. So that's kind of like if you were going to ask just your average fragrance person, that's what they would say. They'd be like, oh, the opening is not as great, but the dry down is really good and it's got great performance. That's kind of the thing with this one.
Yeah. So for me, I'm going to do like something that passed my mind. You know, like, have you go to parks, you know, like Central Park, you know, and you have those guys. They do your face, you know, like
oh, like a caricature.
Yeah, a caricature, you know. And for me, it's like that's really what it is. This fragrance, you know, it's a caricature of Aventus. So they took like, for example, you're talking about that the back, you know, and they took the cheapest molecule that's in the fragrance that has a lot of power. It's called isobutylquinoline, you know, it's like a synthetic ingredient. And they have like twice or three times the amount of that, you know. So it's like, you know, it's kind of a caricature for me. It's like, for me, it's a bit overwhelming, you know, it's a bit overwhelming. And then you talked about the citrus, and here, again, they went really cheap. They say bergamot too expensive. How can we replace it by a citrus that's much less expensive, probably 10 times less expensive? And they went with a kind of lemony top note, and then they put some kind of bergamot base, you know, that too. I said before, it's like
the
very
synthetic
cheap,
one.
synthetic, and they make it like with just a few ingredients, and it kind of smells like it, but it's very, very different.
Yeah, this is one of those deals where this happens a lot with Aventus fragrances, where you smell it and you can tell that it's inspired by Aventus, but it doesn't really smell like Aventus. But it has like enough similarities where you smell it and you go, okay, it's kind of Aventus, but not exactly. But some people prefer that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that they didn't compromise is that they put the 10% of Ambrox. So that molecule that's really expensive, they had to put it in, because if not, they would not, the relationship with Aventus would not even be there, you know. So they had to put the 10% of Ambrox inside, you know. So that they put in. The pink pepper they did not put in, so they put some LME. They kind of you know, put some cheap peppery notes, you know, a blend of cheap peppery notes. That's why it's so harsh in the top note. It's not that pleasant. The top note is really, but once it dried down, I mean, one thing is that they got performance here, you know. I mean, the patchouli is there too, you know. So, you know, it's like a caricature, you know. It's not the most beautiful thing to look at, but boom, it's kind of punchy.
Yeah,
So,
it gets your attention.
so yeah. So, you know, I think they did the job and doing a pretty good caricature, you know, and keeping the elements that were non-negotiable. They had to keep them. They kept them. Any other question? What do you think? Like, what's your opinion on the Club de Nuit? I mean,
Yeah, so the opening I've always thought was a little rough. When I first tried it, it reminded me of like a lemon cleaner that you would spray in your house or something and like wipe down your furniture with, because it had that like sharpness when you spray it on. Because usually I like it. I mean, there are some times where a sharper citrus is okay if it's like an older style fragrance, maybe like an Eau Sauvage type scent, and you have a little sharper lemon. It works there, but this is more like abrasive where it kind of tingles your nose. And so I never really liked the opening. And once it dries down, I always thought it did get better. And it became more of like a smoky-ish kind of Aventus scent with a little bit of like a sweet undertone to it that had really good performance. And in the air, it does smell a lot better than up close. I think that is the case for a lot of fragrances that are on the cheaper side, is when you smell them really up close, you'll kind of be like, oh, it smells a little cheap. But then when you move around and you catch a whiff of it, you're like, oh, that's pretty nice. It's like when it gets diffused in the air, it kind of takes some of the edge off a little bit. And so Club de Nuit for me was always that. It was always, you know, the most popular Aventus clone. And it's really good for compliments when you hit the dry down. I've thought that there were generally other clone fragrances that were maybe a little bit closer as far as like what Aventus does. So to me, it's almost like Club de Nuit Intense Man is an Aventus twist or something like that, like Aventus with a twist, where, like you were saying, they didn't directly do what Aventus does. They took like the structure, I guess, and then they were like, well, we can't do this the exact same, so let's change it and do kind of this other stuff and then say it's our own thing. Is kind of how I've approached it. As far as like ingredient quality, I don't know anywhere near obviously what you do, so I'm just kind of basing it off of when I smell it. Does it smell really put together? Like, is the blend really nicely done? Does something stick out kind of sharp? Because if it does, then I'll be like, why is it sticking out so much? Like, shouldn't it kind of be more harmonious with what's going on? And so when I smell that, sometimes I'll be like, oh, what's, you know, something here is a little off to me. But that's just how I personally kind of approach things.
yeah, I mean, you shed the light on something I didn't think before, but you're right. The citrus, you know, that you have in some kind of cleaners. That's why people, I think, don't like too much sharp citrus notes in the US in
Oh,
particular.
yeah, that could be
You
because
know,
it's in like all of the cleaners. So that's, I guess you get used to thinking of it that way.
yeah. So for you, it's like, okay, that's good to kind of you know, do the job there, but then I would not put that on myself. It's too aggressive, you know, and because also the cleaner, you think it's to kill bacteria, is to kill, so it's kind
Right.
of something that's too aggressive for you, you know. So people have that in the back of their mind. So for them, even those who would like citrus notes, or you have to come with either mandarin or bergamot, you know, those two. And when you were talking about Eau Sauvage has a fair amount of bergamot, but also has some citrus as well, some lemon as well. So when it's a blend, then it becomes kind of nicer. You know, let's say if you have a 15% of bergamot and you have like 3% of lemon, then it's acceptable. You know, it kind of, in an Eau Sauvage, you have a more of that ratio, you know.
Mm-hmm.
While here, clearly in the Club de Nuit, they just wanted to replace the bergamot and try to find out, even using some aldehydes, they can be a little sharp too, you know. So yeah, I think that's what it is. But another thing that you said that's very remarkable is that actually fragrance in the air, you know. Because the whole thing is that when you shoot a fragrance for the first time, you put it on skin and you smell it like that, but that's not really realistic, you know. What happens most of the time, you spray the fragrance and it just lives its life on the air, in the air. So I think nowadays people are just too obsessed about the fragrance smelling good on their skin, just putting their nose on their skin, and that's wrong, because nobody does that. I mean, and especially not for the top notes. Sometimes you can have some things happening in the top note, and you would discard a fragrance that is actually an amazing fragrance.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
the fragrances from the past, they were not meant to be smell good fragrances right from the bat, you know. They were fragrances, it was more about the life of the fragrance in the air, you know, and the signature in the air, the sillage, you know, and what people would experiment around you, you know, as you would be moving the air and moving the molecules in the air, you know, the magic was happening there, you know. And of course, yeah, I mean, you don't want to be really put off from the very start, but a lot of people, you know, they are patient, you know, they would put on the fragrance. They don't really like the first 5 minutes, but afterwards they love it, you know, and they love it more and more. And some people love even more the fragrance after five hours plus, you know, because they like what's happening there. And
yeah, the dry down ultimately is more important than the opening because that lasts longer. So if the opening is like a fleeting 5 minutes, but it smells amazing, and then the dry down is no good, then that doesn't really work. But a lot of people do obsess over the opening, or you know, they do what we were saying and just constantly like this, which as you're moving around, nobody's going to come up to you and you know, smell you like that. So Club de Nuit Intense Man for about $25, like quality wise. I mean, it doesn't have to be, I guess, very high quality to be worth that price point, but like, um, in your opinion, it makes sense at that price point, or?
yeah, I mean, again, just for the price of the Ambrox, I'm going to say yes, because 10% of Ambrox, that is very expensive molecule, and they did not compromise. They put the 10% of Ambrox. So me, just for like using that ingredient in that level already, it's not a cheap fragrance, you know. It's not a cheap fragrance, you know. They compromise on everything else, but just for the Ambrox, I would say, you know what, you get a good deal, you know. So, and the performance again, it's really important, and they nailed it. It's more performant than the Creed, you know. We all agree on that, you know. It's more performant. If you don't want to go more subtle, refined, and you want to go for something really performant, then I would say that's the way to go, you know. It's doing a great job, and that's why it's so successful.
Yeah. And I mean, like I was saying, a lot of people will prefer Club de Nuit Intense Man because they do want something that's going to project longer, last longer, and bang for your buck wise, you know, it's barely over $20. So at that point, it's not even a purchase you really have to think much about, you know. So it makes a lot of sense that people would really enjoy it. And like I said, in the air, in the dry down, it smells good. You know, it gets positive attention, and people are always looking for that. Like your average person wants a fragrance that gives them confidence and makes them smell good. And if you can get that for like $25, a pretty good deal.
Especially I think like a younger crowd, you know,
Yeah.
a younger crowd, like a teenager who wants to get a fragrance that's not going to break the bank and is going to draw attention, as you were saying, you know. Then it's definitely the right fragrance, you know. It's definitely a fragrance that you know, that's going to do the job really well, you know. So yeah.
So between the two, which one would you take, I guess, considering everything?
So yeah, so personally, I really believe that both fragrances, I would use both. If I'm in the mood of you know, like the way I'm dressed today, for example, I would definitely go with Aventus, because I'm just like in the casual chic mood, you know, where I just want to to just like I don't want anything overwhelming on me. You know, I just want that beautiful citrus bergamot, the little juiciness of the pineapple, and the beautiful pink pepper. You know, I want that something more subtle. So I would, and I don't want to worry about what I'm going to do during the day. You know, if I go to do whatever I want to do, I'm fine. You know I'm not going to overwhelm anybody. You know, people around me are going to find like, oh, pleasant, pleasant, pleasant. You know, so you get a lot of positive vibes. So I would go Aventus. But then on if I would go to, if I'm more in the mood where I'm a bit more rock and roll, you know, and I would just like go with the Club de Nuit. You know, I would say, you know what, I really want to make a bit more of a assertive, you know, kind of make sure like people are going to, you know, be like, whoa, what's going on with this guy? Okay, good. So it's not like you give a punch in the face of people, but you know, it's more like you're a bit more on the a bit more aggressive side, you know, of your personality, where you're like, okay, move out of the way, move out of the
Yeah, I think for me, if you just want the best bang for your buck, that Club de Nuit is a much bigger bang for your buck. If you have the money to spend and you want something that's, like you said, higher end, more subtle, more refined, you go for Aventus. If you want the one that's probably going to grab the most attention, probably go Club de Nuit Intense Man, just because, just by the sheer performance, more people are going to probably smell it. I think that for sure, this happens a lot lately, but I think you can't discount like how important Aventus was, because it's really trendy now to crap on it and say that it's one of the most overrated fragrances ever and stuff like that. But that always happens when something is really popular. So I don't want to take anything away from it. I think it's a killer fragrance, you know, but it is stupid pricey nowadays. So,
but for me, honestly, Ashton, it's a little bit like the price you get to pay. Like, for example, if you have like if you know, you buy a Picasso, you know, an original Picasso, or you buy like something that's in the style of Picasso, but it's not a Picasso.
right.
Somehow in your heart, you're always like, I have the original, you know,
right.
I bought the original thing. And also for me, it's like people who come after and copy a little too closely what I'm doing, you know, as a perfumer, I like it in a way that it's a compliment, because they kind of like, you know what, they recognize that you did something that was special and different, and they're going to work around it. So that's pretty good. But at the same time, you know, you cannot, it's like a little bit the easy way, you know, for people, they just, you know, they just copy. For me, it's like, the creative aspect of it, for me as a creator, I really don't like too much the spirit about it.
It's like oud wood. There's a lot of oud wood type fragrances out there. Actually, we should do that in another one.
Yeah,
because you made oud wood, and now there are a lot of different fragrances out there that smell kind of pretty close to oud wood. So you can tell kind of what's going on.
I mean, what is incredible with oud wood is like, when I created it, it was the private collection. It was really not meant to be like something that just in the store, you know, Tom Ford store, and on very party, not everywhere, you know, really very, very small distribution. So we didn't create that to be become a mainstream fragrance, but the fact that it became #1 of niche fragrances in the US and in Europe, so pretty much worldwide, I was shocked, because I never thought it. I knew it was a very nice fragrance, but I didn't create it like to be, oh, okay, it's going to become something so special, so
it did,
liked,
yeah.
and such a bestseller. You know, I did it the same way I created the Patchouli Absolu from Tom Ford. You know, I wanted just Tom to say like, you know what, whoever did this fragrance, he nailed it. And I even kept the email from Tom Ford saying like, this is the fragrance. We don't rework with anybody else. That's the fragrance I want to launch for Patchouli Absolu. And on that one, it was really hard, because they didn't even brief me in the beginning. They briefed one company, And then they came, they could not do it, you know. So they came to me and they say like, okay, Tom Ford is not happy. We cannot get the right fragrance to put in this barrel. It's going to be a patchouli absolute. We need something really special that he likes. And I nailed it really quick. But Ashton, I love it. I love the interaction. And I think it's going to be very important that we do a 50-50 where, you know, like you have your, it's very important that you express everything that you think about those fragrances that we're going to.
Oh, for sure. I think it'll be also just as we do it, it'll be so much, because it's like I said, you're learning the first time you do it, and then it becomes easy, and then you can just like go right through, and we can do multiple ones when you have more time and I have more time, and we can do enough, like even in one day, that we can have releases for like a month or whatever. So, all right. So, well, so there we go. Aventus Club de Nuit Intense, man. Not that it settles anything, because people are they're gonna debate on these until the end of time. But yeah, that's kind of our perspective on them, and we've got a lot more that we're gonna do. Gonna talk Eros. I guess we'll do Oud Wood. Just thought about that. That'll be a really good one. We can talk about Edgewater. We've got Sauvage Elixir. Just a lot of stuff to break down. And if any of you guys want us to cover anything in detail, let us know in the comments what fragrance or fragrances, if you want like a comparison, and we'll try to work through them as we can. But thank everybody, or I want to thank everybody, I can't speak English, for for hanging out with us here until the end. I want to thank Richard especially for taking the time to do this, because he's a busy guy, and he's done some of the craziest, most awesome fragrances in the world. So for me to even like get to do one with him is awesome. But yeah, to take the time and also to like talk to everybody here through the videos. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashton, for this great opportunity to be able to interact with you. Love to do that always. And yeah, so I think we're kicking off something that's going to be big, like something that we're going to have a lot of fun doing, and trying to give as much information we can to the viewers, you know, so they can understand better the quality and of what's in the barrel that they are purchasing, you know, making sure they make the right purchase and they know why they're doing it. So
yeah, because it can be intimidating, and most perfumers are not going to tell anybody anything about anything, so it's very secretive. So I'm sure people
we're
are
here
appreciative.
to unveil the bride,
Right. So thanks, Richard. He'll be back on the channel super soon. Thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Stay safe out there.
Take care.